All right, everyone, welcome back to Seconds Out. It's an end of year awards special, doubly special, because you have myself, Ayman Khan, and the boss, Danny Flexen, and all of you in the comments, of course, as we recognize some of the best of 2022 and look forward to 2023. As I mentioned, Danny is here with me. Danny, sir, how are you?
Special. My mum always told me I was special, and now it's finally been confirmed by a more independent party. So yeah, happy days. This is pre-New Year, New Year's Eve. So the day before New Year's Eve probably would have been a better way of saying it. But yeah, I'm psyched. Let's reward the worthy and punish the ones who haven't been too good in 2022.
Don't know about punish. I think we would get punished by those who were trying to punish the pugilists there with their power.
You're the
Enough of
face
it.
of this.
Yeah, that's it. Let's get into it then, Danny. Let's start with a banger, Fighter of the Year. I feel like this is a more streamlined choice than maybe in previous years. A few fighters stood out this year, including maybe Tyson Fury selling out stadiums in the UK, retaining his heavyweight crown. Dmitry Bivol proved his class, fending off the challenge of two accomplished Mexican fighters and potentially ruining some plans, as he put it himself. And Tasha Jonas maybe grabbed gold, grabbed some more gold and some more. Did one of those grab the brass ring for you, or was it another that took your eye, Danny?
It's Bivol for me. I think if we were doing a UK Fighter of the Year, we did this on the podcast about a month ago now. We all kind of went for Jonas as British Fighter of the Year, regardless of gender. Um, yeah, we thought winning 3 world titles in a calendar year, quality of opposition. Fury was great as an attraction, but maybe didn't get the competitive fights we were looking for. I think Sonny Edwards was the other man or the other fighter on our 3-person shortlist for the UK. But I think worldwide for me, yeah, it's Bivol. I think the Canelo win on its own might have been enough if that was his only fight this year. And it was an upset, although he was the bigger guy going in and the defending champion. It was still a big upset against the pound for pound number one for most people going in. And I thought he won fairly clearly. And then the second one, I was lucky enough to watch him from ringside against Ramirez out in Abu Dhabi, which was a great week, personally and professionally anyway. But I just think that really kind of capped it off for his year. It was a tricky potential banana skin coming off that great win over Canelo. Could easily have taken his eye off the ball, looked ahead to bigger fights, but dealt with a tricky, awkward fighter, unbeaten coming in, former world champion down at super middle as well. So yeah, for me, it's hard to see past at Bivol.
Danny, quick question on that. Is Bivol different watching him on TV than he is in the flesh?
Um, yeah, maybe. I think he's raised his game this year, hasn't he, with the level of opposition? So it's hard to say because when I've seen him on TV before, certainly against Canelo, he looked excellent anyway. But when I've seen him on TV before against the likes of Craig Richards and some of his other WBA defenses, he's looked a bit laboured, a bit one-paced, and a bit reactive. And then watching him against Canelo, I didn't see many of those things. He kind of forced Canelo to throw in situations where maybe he wouldn't want it to at times, and that was part of the game plan. But certainly up close, I thought he seemed to move a lot quicker than perhaps I'd seen previously on TV, particularly his footwork. I think Ramirez, long arms, good puncher as well, felt like he had more time and space than he actually had, and he was closed down quickly. And then Bivol wasn't there for the counters as well. So just very, very fleet of foot, very intelligent fighter.
I'd go with Bivol as well, Danny. A bit of a boring choice. No real conflict for me though here. I think he's earned this year that accolade. It's really kind of like you're saying, all come together for him. We've had that, well, boxing fans, especially the hardcores, have had that question mark about him and what he's like. We've seen him, like you mentioned, labor against Craig Richards. Now, whether that was a ploy to lure Canelo into the fight and it worked, but let's look at it at face value, a real underpart performance from Bivol then. And people wondered there at that point, the people on the circuit said, is he the guy that we thought he was? But this year he's really come to the party, or at least come to his own party, beating Canelo, beating Gilberto Ramirez, and setting up hopefully a year in which we finally see Bivol and Beterbiev finally lock horns for light heavyweight supremacy, unless the likes of Callum Smith or Anthony Yard have something to play the role of party pooper there. But yeah, he's shown us what he's all about in this past year, and I don't even think we've seen the best of him truly yet. I feel like Bivol in that fight with Canelo just used the skill set needed to beat Canelo in the fight and held back a lot of what he's really about, if that makes sense. If he really put on the gas, Dmitry Bivol, I think he'd be a scary fighter, more so than he is now. So yeah, I echo what you're saying in terms of your pick of fighter of the year. Dmitry Bivol wins that accolade hands down. Moving forward then, but of course, actually, before we move forward, make sure, if you haven't already, put your comment in the comment box below. We'll pick out some of those as well. Maybe put them out on Twitter too. But moving on to from banger to dynamite bangers, knockout of the year, the highlight reel gets another edition with the past 365 days, bringing up a number of good knockouts. Plant versus Durrell was a highlight. Wilder on Helenius in the first round. Joe Parker and Joe Joyce even at the end of their fight. Pierce O'Leary, if you're looking for a prospect, picking up a big knockout. Liam Power and Brock Jarvis. Chris Smith, Armin Joshai, Jordan Gill and Karen Gurfey. I've named a number of there. Danny, which one takes your pick?
I'm not sure. Maybe I kind of glossed over there, but I don't think you mentioned this one. And it's my knockout of the year is Joe Cordina winning the world title in spectacular fashion against the Gower. Not just the fact that it was a stunning knockout, but also that he clearly set it up with those body shots earlier, feinted to the body, caused Agawa to drop his elbows down, and then came with that right hand over the top almost instantly. Just the technical precision of it, as much as the power, just all came together. And certainly for me, that was my most memorable knockout of the year.
Yeah, I remember going to the Matchroom gym, and I remember towards the end of my time there, Joe Cordina was on the pads with Tony Sims. I remember being right close to it and just watching a little bit of it, and he was setting up a particular shot. This was before Agawa was announced, and I was like, Joe Cordina really does bang. He's got a lot of power in his punch. How come we don't see this all that much in his fights? And lo and behold, he then produced a brilliant shot there to finish Agawa and capture the world championship, which we've been gunning for a long time. However, he doesn't quite get my award, Danny. I'm going with something else. For me, I was there live in attendance, and that might just tip the scales there for me. It's Jordan Gill on Karen Gurfey. Yeah, this was the type of fight. When you look at that fight on paper, you think, yeah, this is a points fight. We're going to get to the final bell. We'll get a decision to crown the European champion. And that all went to pot in the seventh as Jordan Gill tasted the canvas once again. And he was in dire straits. We've seen fighters who are with Dave Colwell, when they're in that kind of condition, they jump towards their home corner and get that support from Dave for his instructions. And that's what Gill did. And he was a horsehair away from being stopped, taking punishment. He had a burst eardrum. He was in that corner needing a Hail Mary from a fighter who doesn't produce Hail Marys either. At this level, or the levels that he's been at before. But he found what boxing fans call a punch from the gods, and this was a punch from the gods, sending Gurfey crashing down to the canvas. Other fights, I think the likes of Wood and Conlon, which was a brilliant fight, which produced a stunning finish as well. It didn't quite have the jeopardy in that moment that Gill and Gurfey had. Now, I know that Wood was dropped in early in the fight and then came back to win the fight in the last round. But I just think, for me, Jordan earned his name as the thrill that night, was, with Cordina a close second and Durrell, for me, a close third. But Jordan Gill knockout on Karen Gurfey for myself. Now, moving on to the next category, it's the fight with the best bell-to-bell action. Ring Magazine had in 2020 Zepeda Baranchik as theirs, and 2021 Fury Wilder 3. So for you, Danny, what joins that type of company from this year's picks?
It's a fight you've actually just referenced. Probably not a great surprise to people watching, is Lee Wood, Michael Conlon. I thought Conlon was in charge for over half of the fight. I thought even though he was in charge, it was still entertaining. The way they were kind of tactically approaching each other. I found it compelling, even when it was relatively one-sided for the first 5 rounds. And then it just had an air of inevitability about it. And it became a case of not so much who would win, but how, would Conlon hold on for long enough and would kind of lose that second wind and fade in the last couple, or would would Leewood eventually catch up with him and deliver a highlight reel finish, which is actually, as it turned out. It's kind of why I don't put it in my own thoughts for knockout of the year, and that he was severely weakened by that point, and he was literally a sitting duck on the ropes when the knockout punch came. So it's not kind of a stunning knockout from the sense of out of nowhere, Randy Orton, RKO, and so on. But it was a tremendous fight, thrills and spills all the way through, and with a incredibly dramatic ending as well. Yeah, I mean, I remember watching it at the time and just being absolutely stunned at the end, and just one of those fights that it takes you a while to kind of regain your equilibrium and absorb what's just happened.
Was Taylor Serrano close for you?
Close to fight of the year or close on the cards? I mean,
Close to fight of the year.
Neither, if I'm honest. I mean, I think it was a good fight, and obviously the 2-minute rounds means the female fights at the highest level are always going to be, compelling to watch. But no, I mean, I thought in this case, I thought the 3-minute rounds in terms of TV attraction was really an advantage for the men's fight, in that we got to see a lot more of it play out. We got to see Wood set traps and work his way back into the fight. Whereas, in 2-minute rounds, Conlon would have won at a canter, I imagine. So I think it was real absorbing war of attrition. I'm not saying Taylor Serrano wasn't, but it was just curtailed by those shorter rounds. I also thought Taylor was a wider winner than was perhaps suggested on the night as well. So, yeah, I mean, I'm not sure if it'd be in my top 3 or not, but it certainly wasn't challenging for the top spot.
Now, for myself, Danny, I am a type of person who likes a real banger of a fight, and a few fights really made that mark. Taylor Serrano, for me, as we mentioned, they're built to a crescendo at Madison Square Garden, where Serrano nearly had Taylor roped into a finish in her favor. Wood versus Conlon, as you've talked about there, was electric and got a finish in a fight that it really deserved, and an atmosphere that was just thunderous in there. But for me, I really like a rock'em sock'em war type of affair. So I'm going with drum roll. Can I get one?
Yeah,
I'm going with the Towering Inferno. Sebastian Fundora halting Erickson the Hammer Lubin in the 9th round. Fundora was dishing out punishment throughout that fight from the off, and Lubin looked ready to fall and did fall in round 2. But and he seemingly from that point, looked like he was going to be put out of his misery. But out of nowhere, he brought Fundora to his knees, and the prospect really earned his status as a legit force rising up. Adversity is a buzzword that we use in boxing a lot. Kota was supposed to be that measuring stick for the massive Fundora, as was Garcia, as was Gallimore. They're all supposed to provide that adversity, but none did until Lubin stepped into the ring with him, and he passed the test of a prospect. He got up and pummeled Lubin again, who was a mess by the end of that fight. That part of it, sure, wasn't great, but a real brutal affair, which I think for fighters who leave it all in the ring, like Fundora did, like Lubin did there, they deserve that type of accolade. And for me, it's those types of popcorn affairs that I just love. So that with Taylor Serrano for me as a close second gets the pick for fight of the year. Do let us know though in the comments below if you have a different pick for fight of the year. There are quite a few fights that do stand to get that accolade from a number of people. Let's move on to personal highlight of the year. People watching this video could be anything boxing related. Some great moments in this year. I'm a sucker for weird and wonderful, whether it's Tyson Fury grabbing the mic at a WWE event and singing another song, or just seeing Chisora sharing a Five Guys with his foe, or an underdog continuing to rise like Max Hughes, setting up hopefully a big fight for himself in 2023. But Danny, I imagine that yours will be bonding over John Ryder over the soaps that you love to watch.
Listen, first of all, I don't like to see anyone sharing a Five Guys, least of all myself. But yeah, John Ryder and I, we do bond a little bit. Although he's more of an EastEnders man, I'm more Coronation Street. We try not to let it come to blows. He doesn't want any of that smoke, from what he's told me. But I think personal highlight for me, and it's not just because I got a free working holiday to Abu Dhabi, but I think getting to interview at length Freddie Roach while I was out there. I think, I'd spoken to him before when I was at Boxing News. I went out to LA for an Amir Khan training day or whatever when I was out for a fight that weekend, but we got to see Khan as well. That was cool. Met Freddie's brother as well, who apparently doesn't come to the gym much anymore, Pepper. But yeah, Freddie's just someone I hugely respect, not just because of everything he's overcome personally, but also just the breadth and amount of world champions he's trained, the diligence, the commitment, lifelong to the sport. Yeah, and then it wasn't easy to get an interview with him in Abu Dhabi. He's very protected, as you would hope, by the people around him. They don't want to present him in any sort of negative light, which I understand. There was a number of hoops that I had to jump through, and I'm not going to say happy to do so, because who is, but I was compliant and got there and made sure that we pulled it off before the end of the week. And I don't think it did like mega views. It's not like, I interviewed Eddie Hearn that week where he admitted that he doubted Conor Benn's guilt at one point, and or doubted his innocence rather. And that did probably about 6-7 times the amount of views that the Freddie Roach interview did. But for me personally, and its personal highlight, the interview with Freddie meant so much more. We went through his career. He's got a great memory, and talked about the upcoming fight with his guy, Rakimov, against Zelfa Barrett, which played out pretty much as he said it would, I have to say. And just being in his presence and talking boxing, I think we'd had like an hour-long conversation in the hotel before we'd even like broached the subject of an interview, and that was pretty cool in itself. But you do always think, shit, I've just done that for an hour, nothing committed to film. What if no one ever gets to hear any of this? It's great for me and it's great memory, but you want to share it, you want a record of it. And we got to do it. It wasn't an hour. It was about 20 minutes, but it was just great. I can't thank him enough for doing it. And Marie, who looks after him, Marie Spivey, she was really helpful to set it all up. And just him in that setting, very relaxed. And yeah, it's just something I won't forget.
Danny, Freddie's not as talked about as much as he was maybe in those early 2010s. Part of that, I think, is due to his health there. But why do you think that is in full?
I think it's partly that. I think it's partly the rise of a new generation of trainers as well. Likes of Calvin Ford and Derek James and people like that. I think he's associated with less or fewer big name fighters than he was back then. When he had the likes of Pacquiao, De La Hoya at one point. He always seems to be associated with the number one pound for pound of their era at different points. And I think he had that reputation as a bit of a hired gun as well, someone who'd come in for one fight or two fights or the last 4 weeks of a fighter's camp. So we've seen a lot of other trainers now come to prominence. There's maybe a bit more competition out there. But, I mean, he's still high quality, still has a great gym in the wild card, the infrastructure, the team around them there as well, top class. So I think there's a number of reasons, but I think the work ethic and the expertise still remains.
Now, for me, I think being in the company of my boss, I have to say joining SecondsOut has been the highlight of my year. But pushing that to a side,
that's proper brown nose in that, isn't
it? pushing that to a side. Now, I mentioned John Ryder, but for me, it is actually watching, a guy like John. I like seeing a guy like him. The phrase "nicest man in boxing" or "nicest man," it's thrown around a lot, but he is genuinely one of them. He's had a rough shake in his career numerous times, and especially when boxing, it's a frustration story generator, which seems to have been running on max capacity this year, especially with some of the stories we hear. It's always nice when the sport throws you a bone and lets the good guy win every now and again. So seeing someone like John hopefully set himself up for a really good ending, whether it's a Canelo fight or finally getting the recognition of a world recognized as a world champion. The Gorilla's career it's not been a straightforward line, but he might yet see the prize at the end of the tunnel and get that success. So for me, it's watching people like John Ryder or Maxie Hughes, like these lesser heralded fighters get that opportunity and really seize their moment in the latter stages of their career. I really kind of enjoy that more so than maybe like a personal interview myself. It's watching those kind of moments, which I really, really like. So for me, it's watching the rise of your John Ryders. Again, let us know in the comments what your personal highlight of the year was in boxing. Finally, we move on to one to watch for 2023. A number of prospects have really shined this year when they've got their opportunity. I won't name the names here, Danny, but who takes your pick of a fighter that has that sprinkling of stardust?
Well, I'm gonna name a couple because they're kind of coming from different realms.
Okay.
So, firstly, Bakadir Jalalov is already the Olympic champion. Already had a number of pro outings before winning that out in Japan, and since coming back has looked pretty dominant. Gave Kamil Sokolovsky a horrible beating, which few people can say the same. Sokolovsky's known as a gatekeeper, particularly in the UK, and has given plenty of fighters trouble. Some felt his fight against David Adelaide, for example, was very close. I think was there Lucas Brown. I think that he only lost by a point, and that was contentious as well. And there's been a number over the years, and to devastate him in the way Jalalov did. I mean, you'd expect him to, but it kind of just underlines how different he is from a typical prospect as an Olympic champion. I mean, even then, I'm not sure who Joshua was fighting at a similar stage of his pro career, but I imagine Jalalov's being matched pretty, impressively so far. Yeah, he's got a good team behind him. I think they want to push him on next year towards getting into the world title eliminators and so on. He's just a very, very tough fighter. He's got all the technical skills, but he's a bit of a brute of a man as well. And it's a tough time to be a heavyweight. We've got a lot of talent at the moment, both on the rise and at the top table already. But Jalalov is doing everything right so far, and I think it'll be very exciting to watch his journey unfold in 2023. And the other one I wanted to mention is Nick Ball, who is friend of the channel. We've backed him from the start. We saw something in him. I think he was one of our ones to watch either this year or 2021 when we used to do a whole glut of them. And he's done absolutely nothing wrong. In fact, he's had a career best year. He stole the show on the Fury white card in front of what would become the biggest ever attendance for a boxing show in the UK. When he dissected Fury's cousin, Isaac Lowe, who played his part in what was a really good fight. Actually, that could have been up there for fight of the year. I think maybe suffers a bit from recency bias a little bit with me, certainly, but proved very brave, Isaac Lowe, and tricky. But Nick Ball, as he's prone to do, ultimately walked through him like the kind of devastating, marauding tank that he is. And people keep saying, well, his style's too one-dimensional. He's going to get found out when he goes up in levels. His height, or small height and commensurate reach, that's going to be a struggle, unless he moves down in weight, which he's got no plans to. But he just keeps winning, and he keeps winning in devastating fashion. Even when he's been forced to go longer rounds, he still looked really good. He can box a bit as well. He's very, very good amateur. He's at the Everton Red Triangle Gym, which breed very good boxers, the likes of the McGrails, for example, and more there. Andrew Kane is another one who's doing well. So people are going to pick him apart until we see him do it at the very top level. But I feel that he can go all the way. He's still young. He's got the right attitude. He's absolutely dedicated, determined, and he's got a real quiet but unerring confidence about him. And I think that's maybe his most impressive attribute of all.
For me, Danny, a number of fighters could have got this accolade. I'm going to mention two specifically. I think one that's on the name of a lot of people in the UK's tip of their tongue is Adam Azim, especially in which we're in a year where Amir Khan has now formally, officially retired from his boxing professional career. He always had one foot out the door, seemingly, but now two of them, those both feet are now out the door after suffering defeat to long-time rival Kell Brook. There's an opportunity for a number of fighters or a single fighter to kind of grab and wave that British Asian flag, and Adam Azim seems to be leading the line for that right now, and really kind of at each level where he's kind of stepped up in opposition, he's just passing those tests in flying colors, with Ryland Charlton being someone who at that level is very formidable, and he dealt with Ryland Charlton, producing a brilliant knockout there, and again scintillating fashion. He seems to have a good head on his shoulders as well, under the guidance of Shane McGuigan, who when you hear someone of the stature of Shane McGuigan say, this is the fighter who I believe is the most talented fighter I've ever had come through the doors of my gym, that really does raise your eyebrows and say, oh, this is someone who really could go all the way and then some. So for me, Adam Azim is someone who I would say, watch this guy in 2023, because he could be on the cusp of something really big by the end of the year, the way he's going, and some of the names he's coming for. Like I was speaking to him after that winner over Ryan Charlton, he was saying, look, by the end of the year, I want someone like a Yuriorkis Gambo or George Kambosos. So the sky's definitely the limit for him as well. It's just whether we can temper that a little bit, or maybe they'll go with it. The other person I'd like to mention is not yet turned pro, but again already making those waves, that being Enrico Itoma. That family seems to be almost like the Dubois family, have that
he's
talent.
Not Enrico anymore though, he's Moses now.
Moses, that's right.
Well, he's gone back to being Moses now.
That's right, yeah. But his brother Carol is under the Queensbury banner, and again, in each of the opportunities that he's had, he's also impressed. But Moses, as you mentioned, 2022 IBA World Youth Champion and European Youth Champion. Lots of finishes along the way as well. A British Slovakian southpaw heavyweight. Really looks like, along with the likes of Delicious Ori, who as well is someone you might put on the list too. He's that new generation of heavyweights that will take over when this crop are long gone. I'd like to see both of them continue in the amateur game and get that experience, but keep an eye on him, because these two do look like they've got that stardust. And when you're looking for, we as boxing fans look for those stars now, who can be stars now. And maybe we don't quite see those just yet, but these two are ones that in those early embryonic stages are two fighters who we could say, these might have a lot of traction come to them when they eventually come over to the pros.
Well, you might like to see him stay amateur, but sources tell me that Moses may have already signed pro forms with a particular promoter, and we'll hopefully by the time this comes out, that will be public knowledge. We shall see. But don't sleep on Hassan Azim as well. Adam getting all the column inches, and that's the way they've designed it. Adam wants the spotlight on him, and Hassan's happy for that to happen. He can build below the radar, but I've seen him in the gym. I think he's very talented in his own right, and a huge puncher as well. So yeah, I mean, we'll see how they match him next year, but he could make big strides also.
Danny, I'll leave the final-ish word with your closeout just before that, but is there a message you'd like to send to all those who've tuned into Seconds Out this year and looking forward to 2023 and what we bring to them too?
Don't judge us by the headlines. Make sure you watch to the end of the video. No, I'm joking. I say that in the comments enough. No, really appreciate everyone's support. We do this partly to make money, let's be honest, but also because we love boxing, and we're fans at the end of the day, just like most of the people out there. Not the really abusive ones, obviously, but most of you, we're just like you. And yeah, we love what we do. We hope to provide more content and a wider variety of content. Ayman and I have been talking about it, and there's a lot more we'd like to do on Seconds Out in 2023. So stay tuned, and hopefully we'll hit every element of the boxing life that you want to know about. And yeah, let's onwards and upwards all together in 2023. And don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already.
Indeed, like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you to everyone tuning into Seconds Out over the last year. We appreciate each and every one of you. We hope you have a fulfilled and prosperous new year. And keep it tuned into Seconds Out. As Danny says, another big year of boxing coverage coming your way from myself and Danny. Thank you so much, and we'll see you on the next one.